Hello, Superhar family! I hope you guys are having a great holiday season and are enjoying yourselves. So I'm gonna pick some of my favorite videos that we've done so far. My first pick is The Bleeding House of Atlanta, narrated wonderfully by Mandy Mortem. It's such an interesting, creepy story. I love the stories that are true and have some evidence for what happened. This one is still unexplained.
When I was a kid, I thought my mom was an idiot. She was always yelling, "Clean your bloody room!" After hearing this story, I'm glad I listened.
It was a Tuesday night. I was taking a bath and I noticed a red stain on the floor. I got out to look at the strange stain. That's when I noticed red liquid seeping from the walls. It looked like blood. I put my clothes on and hurried into the hallway. It's on the hallway floor. I called my husband, but he didn't answer. Now I'm really worried. He's 79 and needs dialysis to clean his blood. He's not in the best health. Then he appeared at the other end of the hall, looking fine, just confused. Did someone who was bleeding break into our house? We start searching the house. In the kitchen, it was everywhere. On the walls, puddles under appliances. There was so much blood. It seemed to be too much for even just one person. Terrified, we called the police. They searched the house and were convinced it was blood, but found no source. The police had no explanation for the blood either. They took a sample to the lab. The results showed it was human blood type O. My husband and I both are type A, so it wasn't ours. The police never found the source for the blood. We lived in that house for 22 years and never had an incident. After the house was clean, the blood never came back. Our Atlanta blood house remains a mystery.
Would you have moved if that was your house? I know I would have moved. Around in the blood. Blood, 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 blood. Thank you all so much for your likes, comments, and sharing these videos. We need less than 50 subs to reach 1,000! So please continue to share the scares. And I'd like to offer a special thank you to the true crime queen, Mandy Mortem. To visit her true crime channel, click the link in the description. Later on, a paranormal expert discovered the house was trying to kill the husband. It turns out he only survived because he was in the living room. Get it? Living room?
The next is the Russian sleep experiment. It's one of my favorite creepypastas, and I love the way the video turned out. The scary thing is, it doesn't seem that far off from a real government experiment.
Russian researchers in the 1940s kept 5 people awake in a top-secret base for 15 days, using an experimental gas-based stimulant. Because the gas was toxic in high concentrations, they were kept in a sealed environment where oxygen intake was carefully monitored. This was done before closed-circuit cameras, so they had only microphones and a few small 5-inch thick glass windows. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on, but no bedding, running water, a toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners, deemed enemies of the state during the war. For the first 5 days, everything was fine. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised falsely that they would be freed if they submitted to the test, and did not sleep for 720 hours. 30 days. Their conversations and activity were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic events in their past. After being awake for 96 hours, the conversations began to take a strange macabre turn, but other than the subject matter being spoken of, nothing was noteworthy. After 120 hours, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them to where they were, and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other, and began alternately whispering to the microphones and the one-way mirrored windows. Oddly, they all seemed to think they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning on their comrades. A note was made, and the frequency, intensity, and duration of these attempts were logged to see if they would increase over time, and possibly with the amount of stimulant gas released into the chamber. After 9 days, 216 hours awake, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. After that, he continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks as he sat and rocked in the corner. The researchers reasoned that he had physically torn his vocal cords from screaming. However, even stranger than this event was how the other captives reacted to it. Or rather, didn't react. They continued whispering to the microphones, which was what they were doing almost exclusively at this point. That is, until the second of the captives started to scream. The 3 non-screaming captives calmly walked over to the bookshelf and started tearing them apart. Then, using a combination of toilet water and fecal matter, they began pasting the pages to the windows, blocking the scientist's view. Once all the windows were covered, the screaming stopped. So did the whisperings to the microphones. After 3 more days passed, the researchers started checking the microphones hourly to make sure they were working. Everything on their end looked good. At one point, they had a soldier tap the door 1 time. The microphones inside picked up the sound. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said they would not do to get the attention from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response from the captives they were afraid were either dead or unconscious. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice respond, "We no longer want to be freed." Debate broke out among the researchers and the military personnel involved in the research. Unable to provoke any more response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed with the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for the life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was open, and soldiers were sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 test subjects were still alive. Although no one could rightly call the state they were in life, the food rations past day 5 were left untouched. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subjects' thighs and chests stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, allowing 4 inches of water and blood to accumulate on the floor. All 4 surviving test subjects had large portions of their muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth, as researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. Some abdominal organs below the rib cage of all 4 test subjects had been removed, while the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place. The skin and much of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the rib cage. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen working, digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of the days. Because of the clearances necessary for this experiment, nearly every Russian soldier was a Spetsnaz operative. But still, many refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. The test subjects continued to scream to be left in the chamber, and alternately begged and demanded the gas be turned back on. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another was gravely injured by having a portion of his femur ripped off, causing uncontrollable bleeding. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives, if you count the ones that ended their own lives in the weeks following the incident. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured, and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but were unable to. He was injected with more than 10 times the normal dose of a morphine derivative, and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs and arm of one doctor. His heart was seen beating for a full 2 minutes after he bled out to the point there was more air in his vascular system than blood. Even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach and just repeating the word, "more," over and over, weaker and weaker, until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility, the 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room in the facility. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back within his body, it was found he was effectively immune to the sedative they had given him to prepare him for surgery. He fought furiously against his restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out to put him under. He managed to tear most of the way through a 4-inch wide leather strap on one wrist, even through the weight of a 200-pound soldier holding that wrist as well. It only took a little more anesthetic gas than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyelids fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject that had died on the table, it was found that his blood had tripled the normal oxygen level. His muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in his struggle to not be subdued. Most of them were from the force of his own muscles. The second survivor had been the first of the group of 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords were destroyed. He was unable to beg or object to surgery, and he only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought near him. He shook his head yes when someone suggested, reluctantly, that they try the surgery without the anesthetic, and he did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his missing organs and attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should be medically impossible for the patient to still be alive. One terrified nurse assisting the surgery stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming this must be something of drastic importance, the surgeon sent for a pen and pad so the patient could write his message. When he got it, the message was simple: keep cutting. The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic as well. They had to be injected with the paralytic for the duration of the operation. It was necessary to stop the patients from laughing. The surgeon found it impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed maniacally. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short amount of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves, why they ripped out their own guts, and why they wanted to be given the gas again. Only one reply was given: "I must remain awake." All 3 subjects' restraints were reinforced, and they were placed back in the chamber, awaiting determination as to what's to be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project, considered euthanizing the surviving subjects. The commanding officer, an ex-KGB, instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected, but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was let slip that they were going back on the gas. It was obvious at this point all 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One subject that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might. First left, then right, then left again, for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow and blinking rapidly. Having been the first to be wired for EEG, most of the researchers were monitoring his brainwaves in surprise. They were normal most of the time, but sometimes would flatline inexplicably. It looked as if he were repeatedly suffering brain death before returning to normal. As they focused on the paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut at the same moment his head hit the pillow, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flatlines as the one who just died from falling asleep. The commanding officer gave the order to seal the chamber immediately, with both subjects inside, as well as 3 researchers. One of the 3 researchers immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes, then turned the gun on the mute subject and blew his brains out as well. He pointed his gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to the bed, as the remaining members of the medical research team fled the room. "I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with you." "What are you?" he demanded. "I must know." The subject smiled. "Have you forgotten so easily?" the subject asked. "We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go into the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread." The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out, "So, nearly free."
Last is The Back Rooms, featuring Hood Horror. He did a great job, fantastic storytelling. The video came out super creepy. It has a real eerie feel. We always try to give our videos a creepy feel, of course, but this one really gives off an extra creepy vibe.
There's a reason why Papa Bones isn't afraid of bears, snakes, and lions. These are powerful animals, but they have patterns. Things that don't have patterns, that don't follow rules. That's what I'm afraid of. Tonight's scary story is about a paranormal prison. It exists within our walls. It has no patterns. It follows no rules.
It was about 12, 15 when I, got to the Johnson County Community Health Clinic. We called it the JWC HC. And I was there, because I had an appointment. And I set this thing up weeks ago, just a little routine checkup or whatever. And it wasn't, a new place for me. I've been there a whole bunch of times before. Now, the place had a weird kind of feel that just took you back to the old days. It's like it was a location from my childhood, something like that. It's like, just always felt like I've been there before. And I could never really put my finger on exactly what the feeling was or where it came from, but I just knew that I felt it. Now, when I walked in, I felt this feeling of just like deja vu sweep up over me. And, they had them fluorescent lights and they had their little hum going, and the floor had this white tile, and it was just like a little raggedy like beige paint on the walls. And I think that it was a TV mounted up in a corner, a little small flat screen, and it was playing a little PowerPoint presentation thing, and it had ads up there and events that was being held by the clinic and stuff. Now I passed the little empty waiting area and a small area of the main room with magazines and stuff and children playthings and little blue cushion chairs and stuff. And I come up on this lady at the front desk, and she was sitting in like this bluish gray office chair and looking at a spreadsheet on the same like Windows XP desktop that they had back since when they had XP, that was back when I was in high school, man. So I got up to the lady, and it was a sign-in sheet on the counter. So I started filling out, and I told her I had an appointment with Dr. Peebles. And she was like, what time? And I'm like, 12:30. And then she started typing something on her keyboard, and she said, okay, Gary Johnston? I said, yeah, that's me. She said, okay, I'll tell the doctor you're here, please fill this out. Now she handed me a clipboard, and just your basic little, form to fill out and stuff. So I walked back to that waiting area, sat down, took a seat, and started filling out the form. Now I'm about halfway done filling in my information, and I slumped back in the chair a little bit because I really ain't getting no sleep the night before. I was up, we had a night little party, man. I was getting my party on last night. But anyway, so I sat back and I seen something real weird, man. It's like, my head never hit the wall. And really it felt like my head went through the wall. So I'm like, I'm expecting to lean back and feel some, the wall, and all of a sudden I don't feel nothing. So I jumped up looking crazy, and I'm looking at the wall, and I don't see nothing. Not a hole in the wall, no dent in the wall. And I'm like, man, I know. I leaned back and the wall right behind me, so I should have hit the wall. And I'm looking at the wall, and the wall here, so why didn't my head hit it? And I got it, man, in heads, look, my head's so big, it don't make no sense, man. I'm talking about, I ain't never even been able to wear a hat. I ain't never even seen a hat I could wear. Every time somebody got a hat and I try to mug on, it's like man, it ain't even, it's like the little thing that the Jewish people be wearing, man. It's like one of them things on my head, man. So, I don't know what size hat I wear. I gotta figure that out. People be like, well, you ain't an 8. I guess I'm somebody told me I might be like a 12 or 14. But I take pride in my big head, man. That's why I'm so smart. And my lady told me when I wake up, my head be 2-3 times bigger than it usually is. But anyway, I'm trying to figure out what's going on, man. So I reach out and touch the wall, and my fingers went right through the wall. So I jumped back on some scared stuff. I'm like, man, what was that? My voice got all high, man. And I thought, so I gotta be tripping. So I reached and touched the wall again, and the same thing happened. Again, my fingers went right through it. Now, all of a sudden, I lost my balance and tripped and fell straight through the wall. and I fell like face first onto some dirty tan carpet. Now, once I got back up, I realized that I was in a whole nother room. Not really a room, but it was like more like a set of rooms. Like each room led to another room, but it was all one big room. And all, cause the doors, there weren't no doors. It was like each room was just open, man. You know, it's kind of like how in the office space, and everybody be in the office building, and they got their little computer, they little, what you call them little cubes they be sitting in or whatever. It's like they, you know, the room's like that. It was just a bunch of mini spaces or whatever, man. But anyway, and the walls was just covered in this like tan patterned wallpaper, man. And it stank, man. And the walls was kind of grungy and stuff. And it was like, and the stank was like the old, like a mildew stank. Like when you know, something get wet and you don't get it out and it just stay wet, and then you go find it a couple of weeks later and that junk just got that mildew smell. That's what it smelled like, man. And I turned back around. I tried to put my hand back through the wall, but it wouldn't go back through. So now I'm like, man, bro, what going on in here? Man, I can't. So I'm really I'm low key finna panic, and I'm trying to stay cool, but I'm really getting ready to panic, man. So I turn around and look back into the room, and there wasn't no windows, no doors, nothing on the walls, just a, you know, stinking wallpaper or whatever. And it was just completely empty, man. Like the only thing, you know, it was like a plastic blue school chair was the only thing I could see in there. So now at this point, the only thing going through my head was just not just regular fear. Like this was ultimate super duper fear. This was fear. I was so scared that I can't even put it in words, man. That's all I can tell you. I can't even put it in words, man. And I just kept, my mind just said, bro, you gotta get out of here, bro. You gotta get out of here, bro. You gotta get out of here. And it's just like in my head, just over and over, man. And I started running through the rooms, man. Just, I'm moving and grooving. Now I got lost. I can't remember what room I first came in then. And I'm just moving to each room, and each room looked just like the last room. And I'm sorry, and I couldn't find no way out of nothing, man. So now I start thinking like, you know, this is it. I'm finna die. I'm finna die up in this place, man. I'm finna starve to freaking death up in this place. And my plan, I had them wings. I went and got some wings from this place. You know, I'm down here in ATL, but they do them just like Chicago, man. I had the wings. I was going to go over there and get me about a 50-piece all to myself, man. And now I'm sitting up here thinking I'm finna starve to death up in this place, man. And it had to be, I'm like trying to reason with myself, like, bro, it got to be a way out of here. You know, I wasn't just going to be left up in here forever. It's impossible. Ain't no place just a forever place like this, man, you know. Somebody gonna see I'm gone, and you know, the doctor should be looking for me. You know, something gonna happen. But ain't nothing ever happened. Nobody ever called, came, or nothing. And, you know, I had my phone on me, but of course, you know, when you're in a horror movie situation, you don't get no signal. And every time I tried to call out, I just got that like some kind of stupid little beeping type noise, like the, you know, the no signal noise or whatever. And now just when I started to just, like I was finna break down in tears, I heard something from a little bit away. Some footsteps, man. But not no normal human footsteps. You know, it was like I don't know, it just sounded, the pattern wasn't right. You know, it wasn't like the way humans walk. It just didn't sound like 1 2 1 2 or whatever, or 1 2. It was weird, man, just off. Almost like they was dragging their foot something. So now I'm like, this thing, whatever it is, sound like it's dragging his foot, and I could hear like a gurgling, like a type, like a gurgling zombie type noise, man. So now I ain't gonna say that I ain't gonna say I ran. I runned it. So I runned it, man. I runned it like ain't nobody ever runned it before in the history of running. I was moving through them rooms left and right, hitting my elbow and stuff, keep going, jam my toe. Everything, I'm still moving. Nothing making me stop, man. So now I'm starting to feel myself get tired, and I'm just running, trying to push through it. But eventually, it's only so much, man. The human body only built for so much. So I finally just kind of fell out, and I was still trying to crawl and just do the best I could, man. It seemed like I was running for days, man. And no matter where I went, I just still kept ending up in the same rooms over and over. At least it looked like the same room. I couldn't tell the mugs apart, not really. And I sat down, man. I'm just defeated, man. And this feeling of fear just continued to just be all up in me, man. I started crying, man. And I knew I was gonna die up in here. And I'm still here. And I haven't left from up in here. And I done just accepted my fate, man. Matter of fact, those footsteps come every now and then. And I realize that if I just run for a little bit, he'll leave me alone. But sooner or later, I ain't gonna have the energy to run from that man no more. And I'm gonna have to face him. And when I do face him, I'm gonna beat the dog mess out that boy.
What a great story. Special thanks to YouTube channel Hood Horror for writing and narrating it. If you want to hear more of his great content, you can find his channel in the pinned comment below. So eventually Hood couldn't run anymore, so he hid around a corner and waited. When the creature following him turned the corner, Hood looked into the eyes of the most vile, evil, disgusting creature he'd ever seen. It was his boss, there to fire him for being late. Hey, that's not funny. I tried to think of a few jokes about unemployment, but none of them worked.
Well, that's it for my favorites. Thank you so much for watching. We have some great videos planned for the coming year. Take care, Super Horror fam.